Okay, we're kind of in the last couple of videos here, official videos for the course. Got really busy this past week and couldn't post them very quickly. My apologies. So I just want to go briefly back into arrays. Now, if you remember when we talked about variables, basically we would have something $ variable name equals, and then some kind of value, either numeric or character based. Well, an array is a very similar idea in many respects, except that now when we have our variable name here, such as $in equals an array, which contains, in this case, 5 different variables. So an array is a way basically of having a variable in the simplest form, oversimplifying actually, and it's of containing multiple values, whereas a standard array, or pardon me, a standard variable can only hold one thing at a time. So here our variable holds the separate values 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And of course, being an array, if we were to try and print this, all it would do is print the word array. It wouldn't actually print the contents of the array. So what I've done here is I'm initializing a variable x, which equals 0. Again, if you remember before, numbering starts at 0 as opposed to 1. So here in our variables we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 5 if you count when you count 0. So x is set to 0. Then we have a for loop for $x equals 0, and while $x is less than the number of variables in the array, increment x by 1, and print the value contained at x in the array. So here I am printing out x, and I'm also printing out the array. So $in 0 should equal 1, $in 1 should equal 2, and so on. So let's run it and see if it works. And it does. Array value 0 equals 1, array value 1 equals 2, and so on. Let's amp it up a notch. This is called a two-dimensional array. A two-dimensional array contains, in this case, it can contain our multiple values again, but now we're containing arrays within an array. So array $2 is an array which contains an array which contains 1, 1, 2, array 2, 3, 4, array 3, 5, 6, array 4, 7, 8, and so on. Now, this is a special case of a little bit harder to access, a little bit more thought has to go behind coding an array like this, a multi-dimensional array. Let's see what happens when we do a standard print_r, which dumps the value of it. And here I've added the pre tags in order to have it print a little prettier. You can see that we have the word array up here, and it contains 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 5 items, and each item contains 3 items. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 5, 6, etc. But how do we access the individual values, at least simply? Let's take a look at this. What I've done is I've got a printf statement here, and there's our 3 string values here, a new line, a break, and a new line. And here's our array name, 2part, 2_part. But now you'll notice inside of square brackets I've got 0 and 0, and then I've got 2part 0 and 1, and 2part 0 and 2. Now if you remember when we accessed this, when we ran it, there was a number in square brackets here, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then within the array, there's also 0, 1, and 2. So the first number in brackets, square brackets, in our print statement equates to this one. So 0, and over here, if you look, 0. So this is our first array. So 0, the first 0 refers to all of this. Now the next number in the square brackets is going to refer to this set of numbers. So 0 and 0 would refer to 1, 0 and 1 refers to 1, and 0 and 2 refers to 2. You'll see that here. 0 and 0, 0 and 1, 0 and 2. So we're accessing that first major array and the subarrays, data from the subarrays inside. What does that look like? Let's take a quick look. And there you can see down here 0, 0 equals 1, 1, 2. So array 0, 0 contains 1. Array 0, 1 contains 1, and as array 0, 2 contains 2. It's a little bit of work to access it. You can see this. You can even automate this with a for loop if you need to. I suggest digging into it a little bit further. Arrays generally appear quite frequently in PHP, not always necessarily multi-part arrays like this, or as it was called, two-dimensional arrays, but there's also even three-dimensional arrays. You can embed an array within an array within an array, and as you can tell, it would get more and more and more complicated. But I want to switch gears now, and I want to take a look at the switch statement. Now, I did this in the last class as well. You'll see switch here, and in this case switch, and then within the brackets I've got a variable name, in this case extension, and this represents our file extension. If you recall, the extensions are retrieved in another operation. This is kind of like a comparison loop, an if loop. The best way to describe it would be, this first one would be if $extension is exactly equal to lowercase jpg, then image equals image create $file name, and then you would put an exit there or a return. And it's the same for all of these. This is quite a shorthand way almost of doing an if statement with less characters required to create the statement, and it's simpler in many ways. Perhaps the best way that I could describe that, I'll just type up here what it would look like. Didn't quite come out quite the way we wanted it to. Let's get rid of this. So JPEG, assign file name, and you could exit or return or jump to another routine if you wanted. Here I'm just going to type exit just as an example. You would probably run some more code in here, but you can see that the switch statement actually is a little bit shorter than an if statement. Just a little curiosity for you there. Now I'm going to take a look at a gotcha, as in what happens is And it happened to me here in this case when you pull a prank on somebody or whatever, it goes, gotcha, haha. Well, there was a gotcha here for me. Let's see if I can bring it up. Close this. Close. Discard. There we go. You remember that when I ran this code previously, let's run it here. And I clicked on, let's say, one of my photographs. It'll pop up here. I go get EXIF data. It gives us the data that we're looking for, the information on the camera. But if I click on something that doesn't have any EXIF data in it, let's say this one here, and I go get EXIF data, we get an error message, and then we get the file date here. And it says undefined index, date time original in, and then it gives the file name. Now what this is telling us, what you would think initially when you looked at the code, is that, yeah, okay, it's empty. Why are you giving me an error message? Well, what this is telling us is not that it's empty, but that it's not there at all. That particular EXIF key doesn't exist. So it gives us an error when it doesn't show up anywhere in the code. So how do I remedy that? Well, let's take a look at our switch statement, just below our switch statement here again. We have to check and see if the key exists before we can check and see whether it's even empty. So here we have an if statement. So here is another function from PHP. In this case, I've got the exclamation mark, which means not. So if not array key exists, then what we do is we get the date time of the original file. Oops, pardon me. If not, this key doesn't exist. Then we print out the date that the file was created. So again, if not exists the key date time original in an EXIF portion of the file, then print the date. If that key does exist, you'll see it down here, date time, then put the date time original. In other words, the time that the photograph was taken, put that into this display here, print it, in other words. So I got oopsed, but it was a good example of bug hunting. I hope that was fairly clear. If not, let me know and I'll try to explain it a little bit better. I was a little bit mumbled in my explanation there, but yeah, let her rip, and hope to see your examples of what you do with the code. All right.